Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's live chat. I'm honored to be joined by the remarkable Aadila Pretorius, a keynote speaker, ethnopsychology practitioner, and transformational coach whose work has touched countless lives. Aadila is known for her powerful insights into restorative justice, trauma healing, truth telling, and peace building. Today, we'll be exploring how individuals and communities can navigate trauma through transformation and reclaim emotional freedom. This conversation promises to be deep, insightful, and truly transformative. So stay with us and feel free to engage in the chat. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Thank you for having me.
Ah, you're most welcome. Okay, just waiting for my questions to load. All right, Adila, my opening question to you is as an ethno-psychology practitioner, how do you integrate cultural identity and lived experience into trauma healing and transformation?
Well, first of all, we've got to realize, and good morning to all the listeners and the viewers out there. I'm humbled to be here and to have you on the chat and hopefully share some insights with everybody. To come to your question, is that how do we integrate your cultural identity and your lived experiences into transformation and trauma healing? Is first of all, we've got to understand that a person's cultural identity needs to and has to be respected because remember that is an integral part of their identity. So the dignity of each and every person, whether they are from whichever religion, from whichever background, color, creed, shape, size, you've got to respect that human being, their cultural identity, right? And obviously, when it comes to the lived experiences, you've got to, as a therapist or as a counselor, you've got to get to the content, the details of the content, what happened, who, what, where, when, as well as the context of how events unfolded for that person. And you have to do that with utmost understanding, with empathy, with validation. So you've got to have, if you really want to integrate these aspects into your transformation and your what you call it, your trauma healing, it's got to be done with utmost, like we said, respect, with deep compassion, with mercy, with kindness, and with a soft gentleness where you can hold space for that person. Because remember, they're coming to open up their vulnerabilities, their hurt. So you've got to hold space for them without judgment or criticism. And
Mm.
that is really how you start to transform and to really migrate out of the trauma towards a space of healing and betterment.
What is the most misunderstood aspect of restorative justice, especially in communities dealing with deep-rooted historical or generational trauma?
Well, first of all, the greatest misconception is that restorative justice, for some people, it just sounds like, oh, no, you're there to restore stuff. It's about reconciliation and forgiveness and minimizing the harm. And that is really a misconception because restorative justice really centers around accountability. People taking responsibility for what they have done. And obviously, to do that, it has the component of truth telling. The victims of trauma and of abuse or whatever the might have been happening, they have to have a platform and a safe place where they can express and share the truth. So it's got a lot to do with the truth telling. It's got a lot to do also with repair. And it's not a soft process. It's actually a vigorous, trauma informed process that gives a voice to the harm that has been done to the individual as well as the collective. Because whether we are aware of it or not, there is a huge collective trauma in the world right now, if we think about it. We all have been traumatized to a certain extent to some of the visuals that we have been seeing and witnessing, on social media and the like. So now restorative justice is, and of course, we turn to the legal fraternity to handle the legal aspect of this, but we as civil society also have a voice, and we've got to support these type of initiatives, where individuals are coming together. People in the legal fraternity are creating movements, and they want to, from their perspective and from their legal rights and platforms that they have, they also want to contribute. So yes, it's very important for us as civil society to also then support, engage, stand with them, because surely we want to live in a world of righteousness, of truth and honesty.
You often speak about the power of truth telling. Why is honest storytelling such a crucial step in the healing and peace building process?
Well, first of all, if we just take a step back and we think of what I just spoke about, the restorative justice, is how can we reach a space of being just, fair, and righteous if we don't know what the truth is? So truth is a very, very important component, in truth telling and storytelling for the people that have not been part of the inherent experience of an individual, to understand, like I said, the context, the content, what has truly happened to that person. Because remember, if I'm listening to a patient or to a person and they're telling me something, I've got to enter their map of the world. And I can only enter their map of the world with proper storytelling, with truth telling. And of course, why is it so important? Remember, it validates. Again, like I said earlier, it validates their experience, it restores their dignity, and of course, it breaks the silence, because many times people that have experienced trauma, they are in isolation, right? So it really helps. The truth telling helps to take the trauma out of isolation, becomes a shared experience in the sense that they're sharing that. So there's a shared understanding of what has happened. So truth telling is key and it's core to healing and betterment.
In your experience, what are some of the first signs that a person or community is ready to begin healing from trauma?
Well, first of all, when a person is ready, they will, from within themselves, start to reach out. The need to speak, the need to be heard will come up for them. And it is, like I said, it's very important for us to hold space for them, so they will definitely start saying, look, I want to talk about what happened. And that's really when now they are ready to start to express, what is their reality and what really happened.
Okay. How can individuals who feel stuck inside for their emotional pain begin to shift toward transformation and inner freedom?
Well, if I can say with regards to the previous question and combined with this question is, how can they move out? Is number one, you've got to foster the desire that you want to heal, that you want to get out of this space. So it's very important that, you've got to hear that innate calling. I want to live. I want to be happy. I want to be whole. I want to heal. So you as an individual, we all have intuition. We all have guidance that we receive. And it is important that you heed that call and that innate calling that I want to live, and then to act on that. Because we've got to take personal responsibility for the choices we make. Because once you set out that little intention, that little glimmer of I want betterment, the universe will respond, because what you put out is what you give, is what you will draw back. So it's very important that you foster that desire and that you heed the call, that you act on it. So it's one thing to say, I want this, and yes, you're going to draw it back, but it's to take the next step. So each step is it builds your courage to the next layer where you can actually then get the healing and the betterment that you want.
Could you share an example, without revealing private details, of a moment in your work where restorative dialogue created a breakthrough?
So in my private practice over the last 24 years, next year will be 25 years.
Wow.
For me, there's not just one particular moment. I'll be very honest, in working with my patients, especially the individual clients, by the third or the fourth session, there's always this light bulb moment. You can actually, with a trained eye, you actually can see when a new neural pathway has been formed, and there's a deep realization and a real sense of relief, where there's a certain letting go of certain emotional toxicity from the body. There's a release, and there's actually, it's almost, a person can say there's a shift in the auric field, because you can literally see that person light up. So for me, that is moments that it's prevalent with most of my clients. Like I said, from the third or the fourth sessions, when it comes to working with couples, with them also, many times when they start to share their experiences as children with their partners in that safe space that we create for them, and they talk about unfulfilled desires and places where they got hurt, many times it is very revealing to the partner, because sometimes we think we know our partners, and only in this type of setting do they then get to know, like, oh, I didn't know that about you. And obviously it creates then that platform for reconnection, for trust, for love to come back into the relationship. So there are many of these moments, and it's really what makes, I think, for most counselors, it's so rewarding to be in this profession, because you can see how it actually shifts and helps people. And it's really for the love of people that we do this work. For me personally, I know that is, but there are many such of these moments.
What role does compassion, both for self and others, play in the journey from trauma to restoration?
Well, compassion is one of those key factors, because remember, when we have compassion, right, it has to start first of all with self-compassion, because self-compassion is one of the energies of love, and it is through that energy of love that we reach that place of healing the wounded aspects of the self. So self-compassion, self-love, self-understanding, when you really encapsulate that and you work through the hurt, you work through the trauma, that is also when a lot of people come to that space of wanting to understand the deeper meaning of the experiences, so that we can shift it from being trauma and hurt and pain to, but what happened here? Because also what happens is, when a person has that self-compassion, self-love, self-understanding, they also normally come to the realization that the perpetrator, somewhere there inside of them, have a lot of unhealed wounds. So it doesn't condone or make right whatever the perpetrator did, but it explains their action. And sometimes simply for a victim to understand, oh, I get it, that's why this person is like that, in itself gives them some courage and motivation to carry on their healing journey, and to hopefully at some point reach a place of forgiveness, because forgiveness will set you free, right? So compassion is really, it's one of the core ingredients to have that self-compassion and love, because when you have it for yourself, over time you will develop that more and more for those around you as well.
For those who have lost trust in systems or people, how can we rebuild psychological safety in their healing journey?
Well, it's very important that people stay abreast with education, with their knowledge, interviews like this, search for answers, get the right information, and also remember, if you've had a bad experience with a therapist, remember one thing: that therapist is not this, how you evolve as an individual, as a human being. That therapist that you may have seen 10 years ago, 20 years ago, is not the same person as well. Therapists also grow, they also evolve, they also better themselves. So you may have had a bad experience with one person, but you may not have the same experience with the next, because each therapist takes their own life experience, their own emotional intelligence into a session beyond, we're not talking about the qualifications and that type of thing. So it's very important to understand that, and there's also different interventions at different times in a person's life. If a patient is suicidal, more intervention is then required at that stage than just a counselor, because that person may have to be admitted so that we can prevent them from taking their life. So there's a time and a place for everything, but it's also very important that those institutions as well as the counselors, must stay on top of what is the latest form of treatment so that we don't do more harm than good. So it's the continual educational points that or and education that the counselors have to go for is very important. So too is the mentorship of therapists, especially the newly qualified ones, whether you are old or young and you've studied hypnotherapy or you've studied coaching. Find yourself a good mentor, because you can only benefit, and you're going to take so much more into that. So the responsibility is very much on the counselors themselves and the therapists and the psychologists themselves, as well as for patients to realize what they've experienced before may not be what they're going to get now, and that therapist that they maybe saw years ago has also evolved and grown. So yes, it's very important to stay open-minded and have the right attitude that, you know what, people all do their best. And that's very important to keep in mind.
How can communities promote peace building and mental wellness in an environment where conflict, injustice, or inequality is ongoing?
Okay, so how people can promote that is number one, you've got to realize that peace starts within, right?
Mm.
If you are unhealed and you are in trauma and you carry resentment and hate and you are unhealed, you remember what you have within will be reflected in your outer landscape. As within, so without. So peace starts within. Do the work, go through that processes, find your peace. Then also is look at your relationships with those closest to you, your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, your immediate unit. And then obviously you want to try to also have good relationships with your extended family and so forth. Because if you think of a logical example, if you are not at peace, let's say with your daughter or with your spouse, you are not focused. Especially in our personal relationships with your partners or your spouse, when there is a problem, can you really be at peace outside of that? No, because you are in disarray. So it's very important. So peace really starts with yourself. You've got to reach a place of inner peace. You've got to reach a place of peace in your relationships. And one thing I'll just add in that is sometimes we've got to accept that we don't have control over other people. We only have control over ourselves. And sometimes you do get family members that they're not accessible, or they've put up this boundary. And it's for you then to say, look, I can't change that. I've got to reach a place of acceptance. And we submit that person to through prayer, that the relationship will be restored, and try your best. But there is a space also where you've got to stand back and give that person the space to go through their healing and not force the issue. So then it calls on your innate abilities to say, I can't force this. I've got to stand back and allow that person to heal and to come back into the relationship. So it's a little bit of emotional intelligence and maturity that has to come with that. So yes, so how do we contribute is ourselves in our relationships. And then of course it is to realize when we want to take it out into society and family, and family, then community, then society, and global, is that we've got to start to realize that we all know what pain is. We all know what sorrow is. We all know what joy and happiness is. So what that means, we've got to start to recognize the unity in our diversity. If, for example, you take a person that has been physically abused. Now, let's say if you've been thrown against a wall, or if you've been thrown against the floor, or if you've been slapped so hard that your nose bleeds, right? It's maybe not the same experience as a person that has broken ribs and a broken arm over the weekend. The point is, we all know that level of trauma that goes through that person, whether it is intimidation or physical abuse or verbal abuse, that sense of trauma we all recognize, and we all can connect on that, because that is truly, there's diversity in let's say the level of gender-based violence. We're talking about that right now, but it does not minimize the trauma of each individual. So it is in essence to create unity within the diversity, and to honor each and every person's experience, because we all are different. And then it is also to honor the diversity within our unity. Like I said, each one's experience is different, and no one person's story should be minimized. Each one's story has merit and value in it. So so for me it is really about the collective, where we have to start within, go to your relationship, your immediate, and then go in your relationship, in community, in society, where there is the collective mindset of being at peace, and working and choosing to work towards peace with these type of aspects.
What practical daily tools or rituals do you personally recommend for grounding, emotional regulation, and maintaining mental well-being?
Well, what I would suggest is, number one, and I mean, I'm speaking from a personal place, is what works for me, and I'm sure, I hope and pray it'll work for other people, is connection to the divine. Make time for prayer. Make in the life of social media and IT and AI, we are so bombarded. We are so busy. And these things, it's like it just sucks the energy out of us, right? So you've got to stand back and say, now I'm making time for my creator. How many of us have forgotten to do that? So it is to cut off, to leave that phone, to leave the laptop, to leave the tablet, and say, now it's me and the divine. So make time for prayer, make time for reflection. Go take a walk outside. Go sit in the sun, feel the grass underneath your feet. Read a book. For some people, it's taking a jog, because in that self, they go in a meditative state, right? Sometimes it's for people doing art, writing a book, journaling, but make time to disconnect from all the electronics, we can say, and really just connect to source, because there's a whole different realm out there that we need to plug in again, because that truly helps us to find our balance and our equilibrium again. Because remember, at the end of the day, you are a soul. You have a body with its own addictions, its own programming, its own nervous system, and you have a personality, but you are a soul, and it's that soul's energy where your peace lies, and that is connected to source, or to the divine, and that's really where your peace and your groundedness comes from. So yeah.
All right, I'll ask my final question, and then we'll get to the live comment questions. All right, my final question to you is, wherein would you like to, just tell me about your future plans.
Okay, so basically, like I've mentioned earlier, I've been in private practice 24 years, since 2001. And with the geopolitical situation going on in the world over the past 2 years, in August this year, I had a focus group session with very close friends and people that I really trust. And I'm very grateful to all of them. Shout out to them. And in that process, and with, like I said, with the geopolitical situation in the world, I think we all have this innate desire. Well, maybe not all of us, but many of us have this innate desire that we want to contribute. We want to see the world go back to a better space of love and light. And being in this very bad state that it is why the focus group came about. And it's my practice I run under Phoenix Life Improvement, and that's really reminiscent of the legend of the Phoenix, where we rise, we get burnt, you go through the mill, things happen, and you get burnt down, and from the ashes again, you have to heal, you have to transform, you have to rise. So what has happened to join up now is that it has given birth to the awakened earth rising, because there is a spiritual awakening that has happened globally. People are starting to realize, and the truth is starting to come out, and that's what we want. It's that awakening. That's why the awakened earth rising is, we are all part of that awakening. We're all part of Mother Earth, and we are here to rise to higher states of consciousness through the aspects like we discussed here today: healing, truth-telling, restorative justice, and peace-building initiatives. So yes, so for me, my future plans is, yes, the private practice is there. However, I am transforming and moving into skills transfer and mentorship, mentoring therapists. Skills transfer is on the cards for early next year. It's really to help other therapists with the tools that I have developed, and to teach them my processes that has worked very well over the past 24 years. And then, of course, also it is to still have certain retreats, healing retreats, which is obviously aimed at groups, because I want to work with a collective. The one-on-one private practice I aim to phase out, because I also don't want to be in competition with the people that I am training. It makes logical sense. You don't want to be a wholesaler and you know what I'm saying? You don't want to compete with the people that you're training. You want to give them a fair shot at it as well, and rather mentor them, rather guide them. So the retreats for me is something that I want to work with a global audience, group settings, that type of thing. And then definitely it's to engage in peace building initiatives, whether it is restorative justice movements run by attorneys that are, or advocates that are doing certain very good work in the sense of wanting restorative justice. Support that, and my call is here on all of us. It's not just for me, but let's support that. Let's see how can civil society have a voice, speak out, have events. So peace building initiatives, that's one of it. And then obviously the interfaith as well, being a revert to Islam since 1992. I've been very, very passionate about my religion, and having been involved in interfaith dialogue and discussion as well. That is another avenue that I will definitely be returning to, and putting up fires there again to say, let's breathe new life into that peace building initiative. So yeah, I've got a few exciting things lying ahead, but I truly look forward to that.
All right, let's get to the comment questions here. This is from Jitin Rishika. Hi, Aadila. Thank you for an interesting pod. Ethnicity and culture has always been misunderstood, especially in the democracy we live in. Please, could you differentiate them?
Okay, so your ethnicity, look, your culture it's very close to each other to a certain degree, because you must understand your culture stems from your ethnicity. If you are born into a certain ethnic group, you will have certain beliefs, certain cultures, certain ways of doing things, because that is your ethnicity. So there's a very close relation between the two. So I'm not sure what exactly this person has experienced, what is the issue for them, because it's very, very closely related. So I don't know if that person can just expound what problem did they experience in that sense.
Okay, right. Well, she does that. Is there anything else you'd like to add in at the meanwhile?
Well, what I would just like to say is that I think for people that may not know, as ethnopsychologists or ethnopsychology practitioners, our approach is very different from mainstream psychology or psychologists, in that we don't diagnose, we don't put people in certain brackets. Like I said earlier, there's a time and a space for everything, and people get drawn to different therapists at different times in their lives, and that's okay, because there's enough sunlight in the world for everybody, so it's not to shoot any one type of therapist or field down, but it's really to say, as a collective, we are here to help. We are here to help people work through that trauma, and I also just say is part of the healing process. I'm speaking a little bit in circles now, trying to get to the time, is what we also have to realize is that for coaches, and most coaches know this, when we work with trauma, one of the big and impactful tools that we have is when we work with a representational system of that client. Because remember, we experience life through our five senses and more, and we create a certain internal movie as to what that event or what that experience means to us. So we give the experience a meaning, and it becomes our belief system. It forms part of our value system. It becomes this movie that plays out in our head, and that belief system is then our programming, right? It becomes part of our programming, and that is what we then, how we act and behave, what we speak and what we do out in the world. So when we as therapists as hypnotherapists, we access the subconscious mind. That is when we access the blueprint of this programming. And when you can change the meaning of the experience, that is when, like I said earlier, when the client has that light bulb moment, when that realization comes in. Because when you can change the meaning of the experience that's on the internal landscape, that is when the outward expression changes, and that is when the betterment happens. So yeah, these are just some of the intricacies of hypnotherapy and how it works. So is there any other questions?
Yeah, she just clarified here. Ethnicity being of a different race, meeting or working with people of another race, and then the religious practices, especially example, I once lit an incense stick in my office and the staff never liked it.
Okay. Okay. Let me just read that. Ethnicity being a different race. Okay. So look. Okay. So it sounds like it is different from a. It sounds like it's a different from a different a counselor that is communicating. From what it looks like, is what we need to understand is in a professional setting. We don't. You've got to be clear when you're renting a space. Do they like incense? Don't they like incense? Some people don't like the smoke, or they can't breathe proper. So be clear on your office setting and what their rules are. So don't just jump in and take it personal, because maybe it wasn't meant personal. So it's very
Yeah,
important to know. So it's unfortunately, that is when you are renting space, you've got to be very clear. Okay, what is the rules here? Can I, can't I? And also also just keep in mind, maybe your patient can't. I personally have a lung issue. I had blood clots, and I have a respiratory problem. So I love incense, but I
okay.
can't take it all the time. So be aware just of your patient as well. What was the other question
Yeah,
there?
I think she had added here. I think she was just adding to that psychology, the acceptance of how it plays in one's mind. I think she just added that in there towards the end. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just very important for this person to go and clarify where she's renting, what exactly it is, because obviously if it is something for her and it's a tool, because we know incense is used to clear up energy in a room, is to
Yeah.
maybe discuss it with the people where she's renting from, and to see, look, this is one of my practices and I would like to do it. Is there a certain time I can perhaps do it? Because it is a form of cleansing the space. So there is importance for this pay or for this counselor why she obviously wants to do it. It's not just I'm burning incense for the sake of burning it. So that is where your respect, like we said right in the beginning of the interview, the respect of that person's, whether it is your counselor or whether it is your patient, you've got to understand that cultural difference and what is meaningful for them. But like I said, in a professional setting, it becomes a little bit more sticky, because you will be working with people that are from different cultures, different ethnicities, and they all would like to be respected. So maybe just go find out a bit where
Yeah.
why they were not happy with that. That's what I would
All
say.
right. Yeah. All right. All I got to say is thanks so much for your time and look forward to catching up with you soon in the future.
Super stuff. Thank you so much for having me. It was lovely being here. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Thanks,
You
everybody.
too.
Thanks.